This time. This is Cody Bramlette, and I'll let him take it from here.
All right. Hey, how's it going, everybody? Today, I'm going to talk to you guys about orchestration security while using APIs. Like he said, my name's Cody Bramlette. I work at Johns Hopkins University's Applied Physics Lab. There I do some software development, some blue team stuff with SOCs, automation. Mainly, I spend my time on the IACD team, which stands for Integrated Adaptive Cyber Defense. So who is IACD? Our primary sponsors are NSA and DHS, and our goal is to drastically reduce the time to take cyber defense and act on any intel, any indicators we receive, and really empower the network defenders. What is IACD? It's a strategy, it's a framework, it's a state of mind. We believe that tools should be plug and play. You should be able to connect it, and it should work throughout your environment, work together with other parts of your environment. You should be able to bring the tools you already have and connect them together and take your SOC analysis to that next level. And then finally, information sharing. Information sharing is critical to maintaining that next upper hand on the adversaries. But it's not the end-all be-all. It's not that silver bullet. Only working together can we improve our state of cybersecurity. We're not going to solve all the world's problems with IACD. So some of our work, we divide work into spirals, 90-day spirals, where we can complete either one or a few experiments. So we've been doing this for 17 spirals now, so that's about 4 years. And we've done various things with automating ICS networks and detections on ICS networks. We've done information sharing, sharing indicators. Yesterday, someone gave a talk about a pilot that was run on the financial sector. Several banks and credit card companies came together and became IACD and started sharing indicators and automating that effort to help themselves, help each other, and defend their networks more quicker and better. So why do we care about APIs and their use today? So with the use of security orchestration, automation, and response, that's what SOAR stands for, as that increases, so does the use of APIs. We want all these tools to be able to integrate together, work together, and they do that through their APIs. As more people use these SOAR platforms, there needs to be more automation, and so those APIs are more in use. Most security tools now have these APIs, so they're easier to integrate into your own network. But not all APIs are made equally, so the usage and the security of their usage should be a consideration. And when I'm talking about APIs today, I'm not talking about developing APIs that your customers will use. I'm talking about APIs that you guys use, that your SOC uses. I'll go into the ones we used a little bit later, but they're the ones your security tools already have built in, not the ones you create as a service. And find ways to securely use those APIs. So our experiment was we wanted to use an API gateway to better understand what APIs are being used on our network and how we can gain further insight into exactly how secure they are, how securely they're being used. We wanted to improve the visibility and traceability of the usage, and then explore scenarios of detecting a compromised API key and then mitigating that response in an automated fashion. So again, we're focusing on the APIs of security tools. We set up our network in segmented areas. So we had a DMZ, we had a subnet for our security tools, a subnet for our SOC analysts, and then an enterprise section for enterprise users. We needed to determine who was going to be using these APIs and then assign roles to those. We set up our network so that all API requests had to be proxied through the API gateway while still allowing humans to access the web consoles, because that's how humans work. We like to click, see graphs, and we didn't want to take that away by fully proxying the tool. So we wanted both sides. We wanted the API, and we wanted the use of the web consoles for the users. We are focusing on the validation of the API requests and not the vulnerabilities of the APIs. So how can we use these APIs more securely, not is one API specifically more secure than the other. So here's what our network looked like at a pretty high level. Some of the tools we used OpenSense as our firewall. We used HashiCorp Vault as our API key management. Tyke is an API gateway, and I'll talk more about Tyke in a few slides. We used Carbon Black as our endpoint detection and response, Elastic Stack as our SIM, Request Tracker as our ticketing system, and Logic Hub as our SOAR platform. So traditionally in your enterprise network, your SOAR platform has all of these API keys configured into its workflows and into its configurations. And so that's a lot to manage for the SOAR platform. With the API gateway, you allow the single SOAR platform user to have a single key that sends it to the API gateway, and then the API gateway proxies it to the appropriate endpoint. So specifically, we use Tyke as our API gateway. Tyke is open source with a pay-for version. We use the developer edition, so we got a few of the pay-for features. It supports several different authentication methods. We ended up using two of them, the HMAC authentication and the token authentication. We configured it with 3 different roles, a role for the SOAR platform, a role for the integration engineer, and then a role for just an enterprise user. And then we set up different security policies based on what tool was going to be accessed, so how often could that API be called, or what IP address could that API be called from. So some benefits: it allows for centrally managing and recovering API keys. Traditionally, API gateways are used for scaling, so it allows for your internal network to scale with more security tools being added. But it also provides that further insight. You get to see exactly where these API calls are coming from in a consistent manner. Because like I said, not all APIs are created equally. They're not all going to be logged the same way. This standardizes it, and it also standardizes a lot of other things, like the authentication method. We were able to log and visualize all the requests, and many times it's transparent to the SOAR platform. So you don't have to do anything special to the orchestrator to be able to use the API gateway. And then, like I said, we can configure different security policies for rate limiting. You can restrict down your APIs to least privilege. So not all APIs give you that level of configuration for permissions. And then you can restrict the use of the APIs based on different IP addresses or subnets. So we really broke down what defines the security aspects of an API request. So we broke it down into these 4 sections. The who's using the API, is that a username? Is it an API token? Where is it being called from? What IP address, MAC address? What's being called? Is it the firewall and they want to block an IP? Is it a request off to VirusTotal to check a hash value? And then when is it being called? This one's broken down into 2 different aspects: how often it's being called, and then what time of day. And using these 4 attributes, we broke our experiment down into these 5 different scenarios. So because our responses were all based on revoking the who aspect, the API key, we put a fairly low weight on who, because if someone requests an API with an invalid who attribute, we can't revoke that. So that one's weighted lower than the rest. And then where, what, and when are all weighted equally. And I'm not going to go into the specifics on each different scenario, but we configured the API gateway to block if any of the attributes were invalid. So, like I just said, the API gateway is configured to block if any of the attributes are invalid. All of the requests are logged to Tyke, and then those logs are forwarded to our Elasticstack seam. And then any suspicious API requests kick off an automated workflow to investigate that, enrich that log data, and then make a decision to alert the analyst or to take the automated response and revoke that API key. So at a high level, this is what our workflow looked like. We receive the alert, we investigate it, we determine if it's compromised or uncompromised. If it is uncompromised, then we log that. If we believe the key to be compromised, we retrieve the key, create a ticket in our ticketing system, and revoke that API key. Our specific investigation looks like this. We start with gathering our log data and then enriching it. We then score each of the attributes based on whether it was valid or invalid. And then we weight all of those differently and then aggregate that score. So like I said, who was weighted a little bit lower, so we weighted that as a 0.1 of the total. And then where, what, and when were all weighted equally at 0.3. We aggregate those scores, check the scores, and then if the score is high enough, we automatically revoke and reissue that key. If it's kind of in the middle where some of the attributes were invalid, we launch into some additional manual analysis. And then if it's scores low enough, we silently log that. So here's what our workflow looked like in Logic Hub. So the top portion is us aggregating and enriching that log data. The middle portion is the scoring, and then the bottom portion is creating the tickets in our ticketing system, and then launching the automated revoke and reissuing responses. So what we found is we were able to visualize the API usage in Tyke. We were able to log all that and send those logs to our Elasticstack. We standardized our authentication methods, reducing the number of different API keys that we needed, and then adding a little bit more integrity checks with the HMAC authentication. And we stored all of that in our Vault server. We used the logs to alert on suspicious usage of API requests, and then we revoked API keys and reissued new ones, several in less than 60 seconds. And then we tracked this whole process using our ticketing system. So here's some data that we can visualize of the API usages. So we have both graphical and tabular data. You can see the logs in, this is Kibana in Elk Stack. So we were able to forward those logs. We standardized the authentication method. So this is what Vault looks like. And we stored all of our API tokens and HMAC secrets there. And then we were able to alert on the suspicious activity in our SOAR platform. That lets us kick off automated responses. And the text is probably a little too small to see, but it analyzed 9 different API requests in less than 41 seconds. And to manually look through that probably takes 40 seconds to look through one. And then we logged everything in our ticketing system from the initial looking at the API request all the way through revoking and reissuing a key. And what we found is you really need to know what APIs you have on your network before getting started. You need to identify who's going to be using those APIs and what level of access do they need on those APIs. Specifically, put those users into roles and manage. Tyke allowed us to manage these privileges in a role-based access format. And then assign the security policies to each role and to each API. Limit how often an API can be called. Limit who and where it can be accessed from. And then segment your network so that all API requests have to go through the API gateway so you get that visibility into your network. And then if you're thinking about whether an API gateway is, if you need one or not, you need to consider what authentication methods it supports, what type of logs and visualization it provides, and then how can you configure the security policies and roles. And the lessons that we learned is it provides that consistency across the API logs. You don't have different formats of logs from different vendors. You've standardized that across the board. It allows you to secure and protect your API usage. You've now given all of your APIs the same format for username and password or API token. You're able to better monitor and restrict because you've segmented the network in such a way that you can see all of the traffic. And then it allows that least privilege that we were used to for LDAP. And then it provides that scalability as well as security. But again, this won't solve the problem alone. It's all a combination of your corporate policies, your architecture of your network, and the technologies within that. So thank you. We have a few demo videos that should be up on YouTube that go into this specifically. We wrote a paper about this work as well. So now if you guys have any questions, I'd be happy to entertain some questions. Yeah.
So for automatic reissuance of key or token, why do you think it's a good idea if you think it's compromised with that key? You're issuing the same valid token to a compromised system.
So we wanted to reissue the key to the proper people. So it depends on what attributes were invalid. So obviously we're reissuing a valid key, and we're reissuing it to the tools that should have that correct key. I don't feel like that answered the question, though. Could you repeat it?
If you suspect that the key was compromised, automatic reissuance of it without investigation, wouldn't that be, basically giving the potential attacker or adversary the valid key while it was,
So maybe in, I can see that is valid. If they got the key once, could they get it again? Quite possibly. But how long are they going to, will it take them longer if they think they have a valid key and then it stops working? They'll have to go through their OODA loop, decide that that's the reason that the key's not working again, go find the new one, and that gives the SOC analyst time to go through, see why that key was revoked, and dig deeper in that. So we specifically focused on revoking and reissuing, but yeah, there would definitely need to be additional manual steps to go in, or different automated steps to go in and determine what happened, why was that key compromised.
Thank you.
Are there any other questions? All right, thanks.